Hey, everybody. It's Eddie from Tokyo. This is your cryptocurrency update from Japan. And I woke up this morning and boy, I didn't see this coming. It's from Wind. He is with the XRPL Labs. That is, being a lead dev behind the Zum app, which has now been rebranded to Zaman. Yeah, this is part of a thread where he said, we're working with compliance and legal to get a hooks-enabled sidechain running. The chain will be there to stay, complementary to the XRP ledger. It will launch with hooks enabled from Ledger 1. You see, smart contract capability enables utility to be where the space is rapidly heading. That is with tokenization, DeFi, and other Web3 features. And the XRP ledger right now is not equipped to go into that space. And it's 100% required to be a chain of choice for builders right now. When Win gets his chain based on the XRP ledger in the wild, devs will have that blank canvas. What does that mean? It means they can paint or build anything they dream of within the Web3 solutions. This new powerful choice for the next stage of the real world utility is what everybody wants to build on now. The fact is recognized that the XRP ledger has been behind. And as Win said today, it's been playing catch up with the latest DeFi and features. Builders have it even harder to get their ideas merged by RippleX dev developers, and it's close to impossible to get it voted in. A new chain will launch with smart contract capability, which is his hooks at the start. And I really look forward to this legal and compliance feedback because I want to know the governance. Not all are in full agreement. We have Neil Hartner here who is asked if he disagrees with the effort. He says different ecosystems have different strengths and weaknesses. Useful to have bridges to make it easier to move money between ecosystems. But should every blockchain have an EVM? Maybe not, he says. I like the idea of hooks that gives 80% of the EVM value with 10% of the risk. And of course, those numbers are up for debate. Neil, if you remember, is a Ripple ODL engineer. Wietze was asked to drill down into some of the specifics, like does the bridge use a federator mechanism or is it a proprietary mechanism? Well, what is happening is they're discussing several options, and they'll pick the solution that their compliance and legal counsel are most comfortable with. The bottom line is, as you can see here, Wietze put the hooks amendment up for review a long time ago, and he didn't want to wait for the amendment to be activated on the mainnet because it's kind of like a one day question mark. Innovation doesn't wait for one day. There is a name for the new chain, and he's going to share that after compliance and legal sign off. I personally know a few projects that have stalled or moved to another chain because of the lack of movement to bring this capability to the XRP ledger. Web3 solutions is a $35 billion market opportunity by 2030. And tokenization is a $24 trillion opportunity by 2027. Will builders continue to wait for the XRP ledger to maybe or maybe not pass these amendments? I think not. In the series of tweets today, Wietze did say that he didn't want to see a crypto Nokia. And what he meant by that is Nokia failed spectacularly. In 1998, it overtook Motorola to become the world's largest mobile phone brand with 51% of the total global market share. 51%. Hardware was their focus, but software was the future. Apple and Android left it in the dust due to the software innovation. And today is XRP's 11th birthday. So the $1 million question is, will Ripple be using Weitza Win's new chain? Probably not, but they will be watching for sure. And they're going to watch this move to see if his chain gains traction with new developers executing smart contracts with everything from DeFi to tokenization. If that was the case, smart contract capability on the XRPL mainnet into the layer 1 would most likely move to the front burner. It's going to come down to watching this situation carefully.
So I'm Neil Hartner. I work at Ripple. My sidechain for this presentation will be Noah, or actually maybe I'm the sidechain because he's bigger than me. But yeah, we're going to be talking about XRPL for J, which both of us, Noah and myself, are contributors to. We'll be talking about that along with hooking that into the new hooks proposal. So just to give you an overview, we're going to take a little bit of time to talk about hooks. We'll look at what it looks like to write a hook. And then Noah will go into an overview of XRPL for J, some of the features. And then we'll look at using XRPL for J to actually deploy a hook that we will write here onto the network. And then he'll speak some more about some features coming up in XRPL for J. So we've got a demo prepared as well. Will it be a success? We'll see. It depends on some network stuff that at the last minute we seem to be running into, but we've got a recording as a backup. Okay, so what are hooks? It's a proposal by the XRPL Labs. It's supposed to be kind of a lightweight smart contracts. What does that mean? It means that you can't do everything you can do with a full smart contract, Turing complete, but we're hoping that, like a lot of times in development, you can get 90% of the value with like sometimes 50 or less percent of the complexity. So it's definitely less complex than something like an EVM, but hopefully it's something that can deliver most of the value that people are looking for from smart contracts. And it's basically code that you attach to an XRP ledger account. And this code gets triggered when transactions come into or are leaving an account. The hooks are written in, they compile down to WebAssembly, and there's a couple ways that you can write WebAssembly. So there's a WebAssembly script language. You can also use C. Rust also has a way to compile to WebAssembly. And just want to point out, this is still kind of an early proposal. It's in beta testing right now. There is a hooks testnet, but it is still very early beta. Okay, so let's talk about what hooks can do. They can look at transactions that are coming in. They can look up information about that transaction. They can decide whether or not they want to accept or reject that transaction. There are some hook SDK functions that your hook is allowed to call. This will allow you to do things like generate a new transaction. You can store data that's specific to your hook. You can also look up data that was stored by another hook. And we'll get into some examples of like where that might be useful. And there's also, I think this is still being developed, but the idea of having multiple hooks on an account where they get chained together, where a series of hooks could be run in sequence. So let's talk about what hooks can't do. As I mentioned, they're intentionally not Turing complete. And David Schwartz kind of alluded to this earlier, that there's costs to being able to have a full Turing complete language that turns it up in gas costs, execution time. So to keep it lightweight, you can't do everything with hooks. For example, you can't loop indefinitely. You don't have access to unlimited storage. I want to say it's 64K of data that your hook can store. You can't, just like with other smart contracts, you generally can't call outside to external systems. You can only look at data on the ledger. You can't create your own user-defined functions and call them. So when we go through the demo code, you'll see that you're given one function that you can implement. You can't have helper functions, so that the reason for that is so that it's easy to determine that your function can't, have infinite recursion or can't run forever. But it does limit you to, everything has to be in one function. You also can't directly call other hooks, though you can emit transactions that may cause a hook attached to that account to trigger. And likewise, you can't update hook data on another account. You can update your own. You can read another hook's. It's kind of like that old joke about your friends and picking nose. Like you can look at their data, but you can't update their data. Okay, so some examples. Joseph earlier mentioned a couple of these. I'll just touch on them again. So you could do things like a carbon offset, where when money comes in to your account, you might want to set aside, whether it's a charity donation or a carbon offset, you could take part of the money that's coming in, or maybe when you pay out to somebody, you could emit a transaction that sends some amount of that payment to another account. You could do allow deny lists, like maybe you're a bank, you're only allowed to accept payments from people that you've KYC'd, and therefore you know their XRP ledger address. If you get an incoming transaction from them, you may not want to accept that. Maybe you're not allowed to hold funds for them. You can reject that. Pooled accounts, this would be the idea that you could have multiple. When you make a payment on the XRP ledger, you can put a tag onto that payment. It's possible you could use that as a mechanism to say, well, how much money has each tag received? And that's sort of a way of like partitioning or pooling the money to see, well, this amount was for this tag, and maybe that tag has meaning to you. You could also think about using this to manage hot and cold wallets. So let's say you have a hot wallet that you're sending and receiving payments from, but you don't want the balance of that hot wallet to ever exceed, say, 10,000 XRP. And let's say you get a big payment that comes into your hot wallet. You could have your hook trigger and say, okay, my balance is going to exceed 10,000, so I want to take anything over that amount, and I'm going to forward it to my cold wallet account, and that account's not accessible, so that's kind of a nice way that you don't have to have a server constantly watching your transactions on the ledger and making sure to move that money off when that happens. And then just generally DeFi, I mean, that's a broad term. But you can think of things like automated market makers. I've heard some people in the community contemplating how they could build an automated market maker using hooks. So kind of the sky's the limit there.